Today, Barry Bear is planning to make sandwiches for lunch with Amy. Do you know what kind of sandwiches? Big sandwiches. Because Barry always says,
bigger is better.
You can help Barry and Amy make lunch. Just turn the page whenever you hear the boing sound. Are you ready? Turn the page. Barry had lots of big things ready for lunch. Barry had big napkins. He had a big knife for spreading peanut butter. He had a very big jar of peanut butter. And he had big plates. But one thing was just too small. Point to something that's too small. It's near the peanut butter. Barry had only a very small loaf of bread. Just then, Barry noticed Amy.
Amy, I feel so silly. I want big bread to make big sandwiches, but all I have is this small loaf of bread.
That's okay, Barry. I like small sandwiches.
Not me. I'll just have to go to the supermarket.
For some big bread, Barry?
Nope, for something better.
What does Barry mean? Turn the page and let's find out. The two pals walked to Sammy Seal's supermarket. Barry asked Sammy for some yeast and flour and sugar and salt. He wanted to bake his own bread.
Barry, why don't we just buy a loaf of bread?
Because I want to bake a great big loaf of bread. And besides, when you make things yourself, they're better. Mother taught me a song about that.
Take your Amy puppet and put it on your hand. While Barry's singing, make Amy dance to Barry's song.
You can buy some pretty things. You can buy them at the store. But make something yourself and you'll really like it more. Because you made it by yourself, it's better. You can buy or bake some bread. You can buy bread at the store. But bake the bread yourself and you'll really like it more. Because you baked it by yourself, it's better.
Let's make a big loaf of bread.
Not too big, Barry.
Let's turn the page now and see what happened next. Sammy Seal had everything Barry and Amy needed to bake bread. He showed them 3 different size bags of flour. The small bag had a picture of a cookie on the front. The bigger bag had a picture of a pie. And the biggest bag of all had a picture of a cake on it. Take a crayon, or use your finger, and circle the biggest bag of flour on the shelf. Did you circle the bag with a picture of a cake on it? That's the biggest bag, and Barry picked it.
Now we need a big box of yeast, Sammy, to make big bread.
Sammy showed them 2 sizes of yeast on the shelf. The small box of yeast had a picture of a muffin on it. The bigger box had a picture of a cupcake. Barry wanted the bigger box. With a crayon or your finger, draw a circle around the bigger box. Did you circle the box with the picture of a cupcake on it? That's the bigger box that Barry picked.
Barry, I see a big blue sack of sugar and a smaller yellow sack of sugar. And I see a big red box of salt and a smaller yellow box of salt. Let's take the smaller sack of sugar and the smaller box of salt, Barry. My mom says you shouldn't eat too much sugar or salt.
Take a crayon or use your finger and circle the smallest sack of sugar. Now circle the smallest box of salt. Did you circle the yellow packages? Those are the smaller ones, and Amy picked those. Let's turn the page now. Back in Barry's kitchen, the 2 pals started to mix the dough.
First comes the yeast. We'll use lots of yeast. We'll use lots of yeast to make our big bread rise.
We better use just a little bit of yeast. For too much yeast will make a big surprise.
But Barry used all the yeast and some warm water.
Now comes the flour. Let's use the whole bag. We need lots of flour for our great big bread.
Barry added the whole bag of flour. Then he mixed in sugar and salt. The dough was too big for the small bowl, so he put it in the bigger bowl. Barry stirred the dough with a big spoon. Let's help Barry stir the dough. Make big stirring circles with your hands. He stirred and stirred until the dough was all mixed.
You used too much yeast and flour, Barry. Our bread is going to be too big.
Bigger is better, Amy.
Next, Barry pushed and pushed on the dough to make it smooth. Then he covered the bread with a towel so the dough would rise. Turn the page and let's see what happened. Soon the bread dough started to rise. The dough got bigger and bigger until it became the biggest dough ever. The dough spilled over the edges of the bigger bowl, so Barry poured the dough into the biggest bowl in the house.
This will be the biggest bread I've ever made. But Amy, we'll need a bigger jar of peanut butter for all this bread.
And we ought to invite more friends over to eat our big sandwiches.
Is Barry's big bread going to be the best bread ever? Or is he in big trouble? Turn the page and let's see. Amy left to get more peanut butter and to invite more friends to lunch. Meanwhile, Barry tried to pour the dough into a baking pan. Point to the small pan. Barry knew the dough wouldn't fit in there. Now point to the bigger baking pan. Barry knew the dough wouldn't fit in there either. So Barry tried his biggest pan. Point to it. He piled the dough high inside the biggest pan until it was full. He opened the oven door and tried to put the dough inside. But it was just too big. It wouldn't fit. Barry gave one big push and...
Oh no!
He slipped and spilled dough all over everything. Barry was a mess. He wiped the dough out of his eyes and began to sing a song. Clap your hands as he sings. That'll make him feel better.
I always say big, big, big. Even when small is enough. Seems I always want the biggest stuff. I always say big, bigger, biggest. Even when smaller is swell. Is something big enough? I can never tell. But now I know I've made the biggest mess, oh yes. I see that smaller things are sometimes best, oh yes.
Let's see what happened next. Turn the page, okay? When Amy and the other pals arrived, they saw the great big mess, but no one laughed at Barry. Instead, they helped him clean up.
Look what we've brought, Barry. A bun is smaller than a slice of your big bread, but it makes a great peanut butter sandwich. Want to try one?
Sure, Amy. A bun is big enough for me. I've learned my lesson. Now I know that smaller is sometimes better. But if no one minds, may I have the biggest bun, please?
Oh, Barry.
The pals had a delicious lunch. Now you can get your sticker book and turn to the sticker page that has a picture of a big loaf of bread on it. Those stickers will show you different sizes of milk and sandwiches. Can you match them with the different sizes of alphabet pals in your book? You can have someone help if you want. Eat hearty, alphabet pals.